Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Thriving Minds podcast with your host, Walter Parada, where we strive to provide you with empowering talks so you can live to thrive. I hope you find yourself in the right frame of mind, focusing on all the things within your control. All right, so today's episode is put down language and how that damages us. I think we're all guilty on some level of throwing out negative comments that brings down a person's confidence. Even in moments where we think we're joking around or trying to uplift the mood. This is usually done to the people that we're familiar with and are more comfortable with, where we're less filtered to be ourselves. Just think of some of the common phrases that we might say to each other, such as, "You're crazy," "You're being a wimp," "Man up," "Toughen up," "Stop being such a girl." While on the surface, this might seem like it's unharmful, it's actually layered on with a certain level of toxicity that percolates throughout the group. So just think about, the 5 people that you most associate with. You become most like them. And there's a common theme of taking jabs at each other where it might not seem like it's derogatory, more like it's trying to toughen the group up. But it really kind of does the opposite of it. It's almost like embarrassing someone not to be a certain way, to feel guilty about how a person is. Some people might be a little bit more sensitive, but there seems to be a negative connotation around that. Being sensitive is not a bad thing. It allows somebody to recognize certain subtle differences that can make a difference in someone feeling welcomed. But eventually, consistently hearing enough of this type of language, it does chip away at a person's confidence, and it feels like there's pressure to live up to what the group is dishing out. So let's just say that I'm coming up with these big ambitious ideas and I'm around the wrong people that might take it as I'm being delusional. They'll call me crazy. And if I hear enough of that, then eventually I'm going to think, hey, maybe I am crazy, that I'm not capable or I'm just wasting my time. If others see me that way, but I don't, eventually maybe I'll start thinking that there is something wrong with me. This could be a big reason why many people who have a hunger to go after big ideas find themselves alone because it's hard to relate to others. The right support is not there to carry that high amount of confidence that is needed to make things happen. Others who may not fully understand or see those ideas can, in a way, feel threatened by it and can take shots at the idea or the person to maybe hide some of their insecurities. Or it could be done out of caring. Maybe they're trying to prevent a friend from experiencing a big letdown of going after something ambitious. What's common among boys coming of age, or men in general, there's still a level of that machismo attitude of, I'm tough, I'm strong, and anybody that's around me needs to be displaying what I consider being a man. Just think of some of those manly things that people might associate with, like men not crying or men not showing emotion when good or bad things happen. A man needs to be able to work with his hands and like sports. It's a bit stigmatized where if a man wants to open up about their feelings, about them feeling down for whatever it might be, them being rejected or feeling not good enough, they're kind of shunned by their buddies and maybe even made fun of. But it's acceptable for girls and women to do this. It can go the same way for women in general, to where derogatory comments are made, maybe not intentionally, but it's done. Now we are moving a bit away from that a lot more and understand the importance of just being yourself. But in general, there's still that sense of adhering to a set of group guidelines to fit in. Sometimes those jabs could even be coming from our own family members that throw in that self-doubt because of fear of seeing you hurt. And they would much rather you do something that's easy and just a lot more attainable. So they might do that by unknowingly denting your confidence early on, as opposed to later on taking some bumps along the way. And if this happens to be the case, it starts to squash that curiosity, that excitement, that want to be better than the current situation that you might be in. Just think of if you come from a disadvantaged economic background, there tends to be less hope that is floating around. The lack of money can put heavy restrictions on what a person can do, from the simple things such as wanting to eat meat but unable to afford it, so they'll just have something more affordable, or wanting a new pair of shoes because the current ones are falling apart but unable to get them. And the more that this happens, the more it starts to take over a person's thoughts. The limitation of money can affect a person's mindset of, well, I don't have enough money, then I don't have enough of anything else. And this leads to, I can't have that mentality. If we look at parents that might be struggling financially, it can affect them in the same manner, which can trickle down to their kids. And it's hard to fight this feeling off if what you see is what prevents you from getting or doing certain things. An example would be parents taking the kids grocery shopping or just shopping to get essentials. Maybe the kids want a certain cereal, but the parents say, we can't afford that. We got to go with this instead. Or the kids say, I want this toy, but the parents say, we can't afford that either. And hearing enough of this eventually is going to affect the way a person thinks. It can get to the point of, why bother asking if I'm not going to get it? And then it becomes, why bother even thinking about it because I haven't gotten what I wanted before? And this can crush a person's ambition, just accepting the situation that they're in. So in the case like this, where if I'm going grocery shopping and I can't afford certain things, instead of telling myself, I can't afford that, or I'll never be able to afford that, I have to be able to counter that by saying, how can I afford that? I may not be able to get it right now, but I need to figure out a way to get what I want. And this is more focused on figuring things out instead of being restricted by the current situation that I'm facing right now. This is part of that long-term approach. Just because I currently am lacking a certain thing that I want doesn't mean that I can't get it one day. The things that we see can actually limit what we're capable of because we're only relying and going after what we can see, and we become regulated to it. So it kind of limits what we can do or what we think we can do. How can we be better if we continue to do what we've always known? We may not realize it, or maybe we do, but we find it so cumbersome or so tiring to correct it. But the language that we use really determines where our focus is. Just reflect on the words that you use on a consistent basis and really take notice if you say more of the word can't than the word can. If you happen to say the word can't a lot more than can, then that's just a signal of being dictated by limitations. The common language or phrases that we use can be as simple as, can't you be better? Can't you find a way to make more money? And when you're phrasing it that way, it's coming from a negative viewpoint, already telling a person that they can't do it. Consistently using this word or phrasing things in this manner eventually leads to looking for the easy way out, that path of least resistance. It's looking for all the faults in the things and even people, looking for reasons why not to change. Eventually, this leads to doing the same, being the same, and keeping everyone around us the same. This provides comfort and a certain level of security that can be counted on. So eventually what we get is no more or no less. But if you happen to use the word can a lot more, you're focused on finding solutions to figure things out, even if it might be lacking the knowledge or skill set. It gives an optimistic viewpoint that provides more energy and enthusiasm that can fuel a person to do great things. Obviously, this is going to be super beneficial in difficult and challenging circumstances because it's about finding a way to move past what's already happened. Now, there still might be some frustration that's going to be experienced, but knowing how to manage that to where it's not a distraction that prevents you from overcoming what you're facing. So it's looking for all the reasons why things will work out. For some, using this type of language comes natural to them. But for others, it can be intimidating or off-putting. If you find yourself using can't a lot more and want to incorporate can, you have to just be intentional about it. where you emphasize using the word can when you speak and really think it out before you say it. So when something hard or challenging comes about, just say, how can this be resolved? How can this be overcome? Consistently incorporating that word eventually is going to provide a little bit more optimism and kind of lightens the load of what is ahead. Now, it's still going to be difficult and challenging, but you set your attitude towards the things that are within your control. I'm sure we've all experienced being around people that are constantly fixated on the problem where they're complaining about it. There's a tendency for them to just ruminate and won't do much about the problem as they're expelling a lot of energy into what already happened. Now, this might serve a purpose in relieving some pressure in the frustration that's being experienced, but that eventually makes a person tired and leaves them with little energy to focus on resolving the problem. So the next time you find yourself being around people like this, you can either walk away or you can decide to challenge them with simple questions such as, what are you going to do about it? And this can make them rethink how to handle themselves. It might even trigger them to find a solution, or maybe they might just be defensive about it. Whichever approach that you do take, for the most part, that behavior has been learned. Somebody that we admire and respect or that has influenced us is where we develop that same outlook. So obviously parents and friends and just people that we spend most of our time with are where we develop this language. So those that have a negative outlook, maybe they've been reprimanded and ridiculed in certain ways that it's hurt their confidence or hasn't properly developed it. And that can continue being passed down to those that they associate with. It's just a vicious cycle that continues. Some people with this negativity may not be aware of it because they might become defensive if anyone challenges it. But those who have that optimistic language tend to be more self-aware that comes from strong, positive figures in their lives. The great thing that we all have is that we can unlearn and learn new behaviors. Simply trying to unlearn the behavior is difficult alone, but what's going to be effective is if you can replace it with something else. So obviously in a case like this, where if the consistent words that are used are can't, instead of stop using can't, just replace it with the word what can be done. What can I do? What's in my control? We should strive to build ourselves up and build people up all around us. This reinforces all the great things about us where we're constantly focused on them and working on developing and strengthening them. So come to emphasize all the great things that you do and that you see in others as well. Highlight it, praise it, and eventually it becomes top of mind. Get away from only saying something when mistakes are made or when things are going wrong. Now, it's important not to brush things under the rug, but you got to be constructive in the things that you say, that language that you use. But when we're taking jabs at each other, even if it's just in a joking way where it's just as simple as, that was a stupid mistake, it really is layered into our thoughts that can make us think that on some level that we're stupid. Or if we just think about in a group setting, if anybody within the group is slightly different, others can make them feel inferior of not being like them. If we just take a look at some common things like in school, if somebody's in the 6th grade, yet they're on a 4th grade reading level, others might put them down, call them out for not being like them, slow reader, whatever it might be, all those nasty things. Even amongst your buddies, if everybody has a certain pair of sneakers or brand clothes, yet you don't, it can make it feel like you're the outcast and maybe even feel like you're not worthy of being within the group simply by the derogatory comments that our peers make to us. There still seems to be this need that we all need to be uniform with each other, that we mirror the herd, and if you don't, you're going to be exiled. It's almost like if you show any signs of being different, that there's something wrong with you. This is part of that mentality of putting down others to make yourself feel good about yourself. Instead, let's embrace each other for who we all are. So if you put peanut butter in your pancakes, when everybody else just puts maple syrup on them, let's embrace that instead of ridicule it. Let's stop using the word "that's weird" or "you're weird for doing that," and let's replace it with a supportive curiosity of, "Wow, you do that? Can you tell me a bit more why you put peanut butter on your pancakes?" And this can start to generate a great conversation that maybe you'll start to put peanut butter on your pancakes and you'll find out that maybe you like it and maybe you don't. And if you don't, you can simply say, "Hey, that's what this person likes. I don't." There's nothing wrong with that. Disagreements are not a bad thing. So just because we all eat different foods, come from different backgrounds, have different credences, it does not make one group wrong and one group right. It's just preference. It's just like competition in a sense, where those looking to put down, take jabs at others are focused on winning or feeling superior. How can you win at food or culture? That's just comparing to others. Why do we need to one-up each other? Let's just be comfortable in who we are and what we do and not feel like we need validation from others. Overall, let's not tolerate when others take these jabs at us. And they're mostly going to come from the people that we're most comfortable with. The more that they come to take these shots at us, it eventually is going to chip away at our confidence and just anger us even more if nothing is done about it. Now, we don't have to pick a fight with them, but it's important that we speak up about that needs to stop. It's going to be helpful if you can stay composed so you can clearly communicate. If not, anger is going to take over where hostility just creates a wall between you two. Practice what you want to say to those that say those derogatory things. A simple response of, "That's disrespectful to me. Please stop saying that, as I'm not going to tolerate these shots at me." The defensive response from those that say these negative things, even if it's in a jokingly way, is that they're probably going to call you too sensitive, too soft, that you can't handle things, and that may draw a sharp response out of you. So have something prepared where you can counter that. It could be a response such as, "Do you feel threatened by me speaking up to you?" Those jokes that you think are funny are not. They're coming at the expense of me. This might cause them to reevaluate how they treat you or how they talk to you because they may feel in the wrong or just bad about it. The more polite and resolute that you are with them, the greater urgency and strength that it carries that's going to resonate with the offender. This can make or crack the relationship, but will be beneficial to both sides. It can get uncomfortable, but it's needed to break free from limitations. Let's aim to be around people that empower us, that make us feel good about ourselves, and don't need to use us to feel better about themselves. Sometimes those that display these negative behaviors are unaware of them, so you're going to be doing them a favor and bringing up things that they might have missed. Essentially, you set the standard of what you will and will not tolerate, and you're going to have greater self-respect that naturally increases your confidence. You'll operate with a greater sense of conviction where maybe you were once more undecided on what to do. You'll just make a decision and stick with it. I think many of us have come across these types of people and we allowed them to be in our lives without letting them know where we stand on it, how they talk and treat us, or simply we move on from them. I know for me, the people that I thought were worth being in my life, I've confronted them about put downs, and it's turned out well. Others, I just decided to move on from them. Some people you have in your life that enrich you, and others were just present. So come to figure out which ones are worth it for you. Now, this is not to say that we got to be sensitive about every little thing that people come to say to us. Some things we can just let silence take care of and show it through our actions. We can avoid walking on eggshells, but we got to know the things that we stand for and what we're going to do to uphold it. And part of that is having that self-respect for ourselves. Let's prevent others from knocking us down by those cheap shots that they want to take at us. It's important to regulate them because it's going to affect our own self-talk and how we come to view ourselves. Come to evaluate what you say to yourself when things go well, when things go bad, and on your boring days, and how you come to value yourself. You might be surprised to find out that the words that people say to us affect all of this. So it's foundational that we know who helps us and who's tearing us down. We want to make sure that we're our own greatest assets, and we want to pass that on to the people that we come in contact with. How others treat us is what we pass along to others if unaware. This just leads to an endless cycle of put downs that might seem like friendly banter, like we want to toughen each other up, and that makes sense to a certain degree. We want to make sure that we're not overly sensitive about the things that are said to us, but really we need to evaluate how we come to talk to ourselves, how we come to talk to others, especially when it comes to making mistakes. Let's make sure that when we make mistakes or others do, that we avoid the put downs and instead help to offer some words of encouragement during times when we're feeling down. Just think, when we screw up in whatever capacity or whatever we're doing, it already makes us feel bad about ourselves. So do we really want to pile that on, building more momentum in that wrong direction? But when you're aware of these interactions with others, you can use what you learn to help others. It really is a pivotal moment where you start to question, why do I talk to myself this way? Why do I talk to others in this manner? No matter where your starting point is, if the things that you say are neutral or positive, then you'll be confident in the direction that you're going and you'll continue to build on it. There's a chance that you may stray from it, but at least in being aware, you can help to know where you're getting off path and course correct as needed. And if you find out that the things that you say to yourself and others is negative with those put downs, then at least you're taking the first step in self-evaluating where you're at. This makes change a lot more attainable. So hopefully the goal is that we build each other up with the language that we use instead of trying to make ourselves feel good at the expense of others. It's understandable we want to have those friendly jokes with each other, with those people that we hold close to us, but we got to realize that certain things that we say in a negative context can really affect how a person feels about themselves, views themselves, and the more that is said, the more it's just reinforcing the message. So the next time you find yourself falling down and you're feeling totally embarrassed, consistently remind yourself to have some sort of words of encouragement, like, I'm going to get myself up and move on from this, instead of, I look like a total idiot. And in turn, if you see somebody else in that same position that you've been in, to go over and offer a helping hand, asking, hey, are you all right? You need any help? Sometimes this can make all the difference in changing a person's outlook of the situation that they're in. It can lighten the load, taking some of that pressure off to look a certain way or be a certain way. Let's avoid walking on eggshells and being overly critical of ourselves and of one another. To have the right humor and uplifting message. Let's find the right balance where we can be stronger together through those words that are said to each other. Build momentum in that right direction, and that starts with the language that we use to ourselves and to one another. It might be tempting to have a laugh at our own expense or at somebody else's, but we just got to reinforce the great things about ourselves. The jokes, all the put down, the smart aleck remarks need to be kept in check because ultimately it can chip away at a person's belief in themselves. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're interested in more topics like this, become a Thriving Minds member at www.thrivingminds.live. It's your personal development resource so you can build that right mindset and live to thrive. All right, until next time.